The dangerous threesome, Bangladesh, China, and Pakistan, and now a looming third world war. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Global Express. I'm Neena Gopal. This is where we pick out on the early warning signs of what could pose a threat to India's security and integrity. Operation Sindoor is a clear manifestation of how, in the space of little more than 5 years, countries like Pakistan that we had thought we had contained upped the terrorism quotient, and some enemies turned into friends, and long-term allies like Bangladesh turned hostile. This is becoming one tough neighborhood, and it extends to the two ongoing wars in Gaza and Ukraine, and now the contentious Iran nuclear deal. The new Hamas chief, Mohammed Shawar, in Gaza has just been assassinated a day after Hamas offered a ceasefire. As for Russian President Vladimir Putin, after what looks like a falling out with the US President Donald Trump, the Russian strongman is actually threatening a third world war. Is he just testing the waters, or is it a portent of things to come? And now, India, fanning out to expose Pakistan's terror nexus with a diplomatic campaign, is up against a Pakistan blitzkrieg, shoring up its alliances with the top guns Beijing, Istanbul, and Tehran. The newly minted Field Marshal Asim Munir by Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif's side, projecting India as the aggressor and Pakistan as the peacemaker as they call for peace talks. Pakistan is being driven, a report by the United States Defense Intelligence Agency states that with its perception of India as an existential threat. Today, we look to India's concern over our unstable neighbor, not just to the west, but to the east, Bangladesh, headed by interim advisor Muhammad Yunus, threatening to stab India's chicken neck, a reference to the Siliguri corridor, the narrow strip between Bangladesh and Nepal that connects India's northeastern states to the mainland. A former Bangladesh general has even said Dhaka would occupy India's northeast if India invaded Pakistan. The Assam chief minister's counter to Bangladesh that it has its own chicken necks to worry about is equally, dangerous, a dangerous upping of the verbal war. Even as India keeps an eye on the fate of hundreds of Indian students heading to the US for higher studies, and the US puts their visas on hold, this big story today is this dangerous threesome. The big story today is the dangerous threesome, who collectively pose a threat to India's vulnerable east, Bangladesh, China, Pakistan, and by extension, Myanmar. Bangladesh internal challenges, the challenge posed to Mohammed Yunus, the 84-year-old Nobel Peace Prize winner from within by the Army Chief, Army General Waqar Uzzaman. He was pushing for elections, while the ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has attributed her forced exit to refusing to give in to the United States on St. Martin's Island, just as her father was. On that note, let me introduce our guest who can tell us more about whether this new Bangladesh under Mohammed Yunus poses a military threat to India, a security threat, and help us deconstruct the strategic importance of the Chittagong and Rakhine corridor that Beijing and Washington apparently want control over. On the show today is respected Bangladeshi journalist and commentator Syed Badrul Hassan. With over 4 decades of experience, he writes for publications in India, Bangladesh, and Great Britain. He's authored 5 books and has served as Minister of Press at the Bangladesh High Commission in London. Welcome, Mr. Hassan.
Thank you.
Also with us is Professor Sriradha Datta, who writes extensively on our eastern neighbor. Professor Datta is Professor, Jindal School of International Affairs, Dopi Jindal Global University. Formerly, she was Director of Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad Institute of Asian Studies in Kolkata and Fellow, Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis. Welcome, Professor Datta. And to give us an insight into our military strategy is Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma. He holds the General Bipin Rawat Chair of Excellence at USI, is on the Executive Council at IDSA, Distinguished Fellow at Vivekananda International Foundation. He was also Adjutant General, Indian Army, Corps Commander, Fire and Fury Corps, responsible for Ladakh and the Siachen Glacier. Welcome, General Sharma.
Thank you, Neil.
Let's start with the internal situation. in Bangladesh, Mr. Badrul Ehsan, if I can start with you. What exactly provoked the Army Chief, General Zaman, to go public with his concerns over Yunus agreeing to allow a corridor, the Rakhine corridor, to be opened up at UN's behest, apparently to help the Rohingya people in Myanmar? I mean, General Zaman said the corridor is completely unacceptable. What is the general's concern? Is it that he said that an unelected government is making critical decisions on allowing the US an entry into Bangladesh? Isn't it exactly what Sheikh Hasina said as well? On the fact that she was ousted because she refused to give the US a base in St. Martin's Island. Did the US play a role at all, Mr. Hassan? I mean, Sheikh Hasina has accused the US of doing the same thing to her father, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. I know it's a
Thank
very
you.
long
Yes,
question.
I know. Thank you. About beginning with the role of the US in the political change that took place in Bangladesh last August. I think when Sheikh Hasina made those accusations, a lot of people were very dismissive of her concerns because they thought it was political propaganda on her part. But now, over the period of these last 10 months, we see that her predictions or her fears are beginning to come true or threatening to come true. Now, what has happened of late in Bangladesh is regarding the corridor. There's a feeling that when this corridor issue was discussed by the interim government, which of course, as you know, is an unelected government and more so an unconstitutional government. So the army, the military, doesn't seem to have been consulted on the issue. Recently, the government appointed an American citizen, a Bangladeshi American, Dr. Khalilur Rahman,
Yes.
as a national security advisor. Now, in Bangladesh's history, there's never been a national security advisor. Now, the worry is that Dr. Khalilur Rahman has played a role in promoting this, what they call a humanitarian corridor. Now, this humanitarian corridor is a threat to the country in the sense that in the guise of providing aid to the Rohingya refugees who are in Bangladesh at present and who are in Rakhine state, where the Arakan National Army, the rebel armies, appears to be controlling large patches of territory, that will provoke the Myanmar regime into some sort of retaliation. Already, the Myanmar regime has expressed its displeasure over Bangladesh's decision to go for this humanitarian corridor. So the army, and now, of course, the army, as also broad swathes of people in Bangladesh, they feel that if this humanitarian corridor is actually established, the Arakan rebels will have a free ride. As it is, there are reports that these Arakan rebels, they cheerfully come into Bangladesh, they cross the border, and then they go back to Rakhine, and they come back. So already the threat is there. And if you recall, Sheikh Hasina, in the last stages of her government, she referred to a white man directing her to establish a Christian state. Yes. So well, that was her statement. That was, I mean, in the circumstances that she made it, that is a subject for study. But the army in Bangladesh now seems to be rattled over two things. First of all, the humanitarian corridor, and at a recent meeting of army military commanders headed by the Army Chief General Zaman, there was a clear consensus that there will be no humanitarian corridor. And you will notice that since that statement was made by General Zaman, and since that meeting of army commanders, the Yunus regime has fallen silent. They have said not a word. See, and Khalilur Rahman, the National Security Advisor, he has gone to Qatar. For what reason? Nobody knows. This government is, because it is unconstitutional, it is also non-transparent. So we have not heard anything from that side. And about elections, the army chief has made it clear. I think he and the army, the armed forces in general, they have been getting disturbed over recent incidents of lawlessness in the country. And what we have in Bangladesh is a clear instance of mob rule. Everywhere you go, there's the mob. and say it was the mobs that led to the fall of the Awami League government. It was the mobs that led to the change of members of the judiciary and every other sector. Now we have these things, and we have these sad developments that have been happening, and plus the fact that the Yunus regime has been has not been able to reassure the country that reassure the country of a specific date timeline for elections. Even now, after once the army chief made the comment that elections must be held by December, but by December it will have been more than a year since the fall of the Awami League government. Yunus is reported to have told his people close to him, particularly his advisors, that he was thinking of resigning. But that appears to be a
That's
gimmick.
right. It was a gimmick. It was a game.
That was a gimmick. I mean, there's no intention on his part to resign. He was just testing the waters. And now, again, he has come forth, he and his people have come forth with the idea that elections will be held by June next year. Yunus has of late said he will not stay in power a day longer than necessary. It's the kind of language that we heard from people like General Yahya Khan in 1971, before and after the election were held. So the situation in Bangladesh, socially, there's disorder, there's chaos, there's anarchy in the country, and nobody actually knows who is governing. On the one side, there's the army. On the one side, there's this ineffectual Yunus interim government, and in different areas of the country, people are being removed from their jobs without notice. People are being arrested, and the politicians have been arrested, lawyers have been arrested, journalists are in jail, and they are not yet access to legal representation. Even drama artists, film actors, movie actors, they have been carted off to jail.
That's right.
So
The woman who
unless
played
yes,
Indian actress was targeted as well.
yes, because the specific target is not mentioned, but then she played the role of Begum Mujib in a movie directed by the Indian movie director Sham Benegal. So
That's
see,
right.
anything connected with Sheikh Mujibur Rahman or Sheikh Hasina or the Awami League, that is under threat in the country now. So unless the feeling, and then it is, of course, the imposition of a ban on the Awami League. Like 1971, the Awami League was banned by Yahya Khan. And what were the ramifications? The country was liberated by the Awami League. Now they have banned the Awami League. The Awami League always has had a vote bank of anywhere between 35 and 40% of the popular vote. Now the feeling, unverified of course, feeling is that this decision to ban the Awami League has also brought all those elements who are wedded to the principles of the War of Liberation together. And if elections are held today, and the Awami League is allowed to take part, the Awami League will win the election hands down. So they've banned the Awami League, but you can also feel that they're afraid of the Awami League. In fact, Yunus told his council of advisors the other day that the Awami League is destabilizing the situation. That shows that the Awami League is still a potent force in the country.
A potent force. That's very interesting. Professor Datta, if I could bring you in, you've heard, on the situation, you've tracked what's happening in Bangladesh. But, this relationship between Yunus and the army chief looks a little, very similar to what has happened in the past when the army chiefs have stepped in. Do you think elections will take place at all? I mean, or will there be some kind of an intervention by the army? Is this what he's doing? Is he laying the groundwork for that? Because the opposition, but Bangladesh National Party, according to some of our sources, is not doing so badly either. Because it's got it probably gets now room to maneuver, while the Jamaat-e-Islami, whose leader was released from death row by the Supreme Court, this man called Ehsan Tasneem, is also apparently a force to reckon with. Do you have a comment on that?
Going back to the army and the interim difference of opinion, I think it's being overplayed. What I feel is the army
You mean the differences are being overplayed?
Yes. It is. I mean,
Okay.
there would be some difference, but I still think as of today, interim has the support of the army. What the army has voiced its, objection to has been the way the student leaders have behaved. He's been very clear about the violence that has been ushered in, and he said that this is the army should not have to interfere in internal affairs. That's not my job, and don't make a situation like this. But if the army had to intervene, they would have had already, because there are many opportunities they could have. But I essentially believe, for a variety of reasons, not only the UN peacekeeping force, which is something that is very often talked about, there are internal reasons for that also, that the army wants to be a support system from behind. It does not want to take over, and I think this media, too many conspiracy theories between the differences between the interim and specifically and the army, I think has been very overplayed. I don't agree to that. On the other hand, you
Okay.
talked about elections. I do believe Bangladesh will go for elections. There has been again a large opinion, especially coming from India, that Yunus is here to stay. I somehow feel differently. I feel that at this point of time, he's exasperated. He's seen that he's not able to control, and he's bitten far more than he could chew. He's going to, the point is whether it's going to be December election, which is what BNP and the RB is asking for, or whether it's going to be June, latest June, if not earlier. That's the critical bit. And I really can't understand what the NCP or the student groups or even Jamaat would actually gain by, deferring elections by another few months, because nothing in the landscape is going to change. And one particular point about the Awami League, yes, that's the elephant in the room. There are ban on its activities. I don't know why this government did not go ahead on the judiciary and the legal process, which would have actually dealt with the matter far more constructively than just doing an activity ban. But I mean, I've known Badrullah for very long, but I do disagree with the fact that he thinks Awami League will win hands down. I would think Awami League should come in as an opposition lead, team here, really. I do not ever think Awami League is going to win in the coming elections.
Okay, so next point I want to make to you, Professor Datta, India, the way that India has handled Bangladesh since Yunus took over as the advisor. I mean, have we made the right moves? It's not just these ugly tit for tat threats in our respective chicken necks, but we've restricted imports now on Bangladesh, biggest exports, its garments, on fruit and processed food and through our land entry points, and allowed entry only through Kolkata and through Mumbai. What is our concern over the use of the land ports, and is this the right approach to take, towards Dhaka?
I for certainly have often spoken and written about this, Nina, that I don't think this has been really a correct approach. We've had reasons to be upset with this whole uprising that took place in August, the interim government, because Indians largely still believe that, this is not a legitimate government because there has been no place for it in the constitution. But my argument has been one and
Yeah.
only, that Bangladeshis wanted interim, Bangladeshis wanted Yunus to take over. Even today, I would argue that no matter what is the difference between the public perception about the government, and a lot of the things which Badrul Bhai mentioned is true, is happening, economic instability, social disorder, a whole lot of things. But Yunus, even today, is the most consensual candidate. There is no two ways on that. We, of course, took it to another level. There's been many instances when we've heard that the Yunus government wanted to reach out to India, wanted meetings, but we really kept them at arm's length. And I think my only way of re-examining is this: once elections take place, India will kind of go back to its earlier bilateral
Okay.
situation, but which is difficult to, what we've been able to create with the Awami League government and Sheikh Hasina particularly is very difficult to recreate now. And also, let's not forget, there is a huge anti-India baggage which is going on there for whatever reasons, right or wrong.
Okay, okay, that's very interesting. General, if I can come to you, I mean, we did have, the army chief actually, going along with the holding joint exercise with Pakistan last February. So that was quite interesting. But Dhaka's outreach to Pakistan, to China, to the US, it's a complete pivot from the previous Hasina government's policy. Has India done the right thing by reacting as we have done so far? I mean, because Dhaka's strategic security ties with Pakistan post Operation Sindoor, I mean, nobody saw this coming together of this, who I call this dangerous threesome, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and China. I mean, Pakistan clearly wants payback for Operation Sindoor, but China has consistently, I mean, you've served there, they've labeled Arunachal Pradesh as South Tibet. Does China have the wherewithal to squeeze the Northeast? Are we alive to the threat to the Siliguri corridor? I mean, do we have the military capacity to fight?
Yeah, so
Operation Sindoor showed us how differently wars are fought today.
thank you, Nina. To answer the last question first, do we have the capability? I would say yes. And let's start with
Okay.
that premise that we have the capability. But why should we fight? I mean, why should we fight with every neighbor that we have? How many adverse neighbors can we carry in India also? So, we have adversity on the west and we have adversity on the north. Having said that, let me build on this issue. Look, even when Sheikh Hasina was there, and even the previous times, the bonhomie that Bangladesh had with China was not reducing. It already existed. See, even in Sheikh Hasina's time, they made the biggest port that they could have, military port, which is called BNS Sheikh Hasina, opened, I think, 2 years ago, which has got berths for, I think, 6 submarines and 8 frigates. It's a very big port called Pekwa, military port, a naval port. The Bangladesh doesn't have 6 submarines, and they're not even planning to have 6 submarines in time. Why would they make a 6 submarine base out there in Pekwa? And it already
Why did they
already
do
given.
that?
Sorry. So
I
it's a
said,
true.
why did they do that?
Why did they do that? It's because the Chinese want to establish their footprint and their thumb in every place that they can do so. So it's one more place. They had a thought process on doing it in Chakpyu, which is in Myanmar, and then Chakpyu come under all this hassle with the Rakhine state and all the problem with Arakan army. So that's going to put on slight bit of hold. But then he had one more footprint across there into Bangladesh. And if you see the Chinese footprint is on nearly the entire, including the weaponry. Bangladesh is the second largest buyer of weaponry in China. And it's not in the times of Mr. Yunus, it's the times previously. So when we say that all that goody things were happening earlier times, it was not so goody. We could read into this. There has always been a kind of relationship that they maintained. In the later day, recent visit of Mr. Yunus across to China, many other things have been signed which cause concern to us. And I think our concern, see, our sensitivity to China is well known into our neighborhood. It is known to every one of these countries that we have issues with them. We have great economic relationships with China. It's increasing day by day. But then there is a geostrategic issues that stands out openly. And if the kind of bonhomie which is being created on this score for a very long time, well, that that irks us tremendously. And I must also say that even before independence, and Shirada and Mr. Ahsan are specialists in the subject, a kind of Pakistan always remained in Bangladesh even after independence. There is that
Okay.
feel that Pakistan was just taken out of the thought process from on Bangladesh is not right. There was a feeling. There were organizations which were pro to Pakistan, may not be so overt, but then they did exist in there. And so now when you say that there is a relationship with Pakistan, well, the relationship with Pakistan has been there for some time, and it is only thing it's come to fore now, and we have to read into this relationship. It's not that everything is hunky dory. Bangladesh still comes up with reparations when their ministers visit there, saying that they want reparations from 1971, and all those issues there. They're still on the fore. But then there is a relationship coming with Pakistan, and it should be watchful of. I don't think militarily we need to drag the issue too far. I mean, every country is allowed relationships of its kind. Even last year, we used to get a lack of 1 lakh tourists came in the month of November. We used to get about 2.5 million, sorry, refugees, I'm saying tourists. 2.5 million tourists used to come to India at even the worst of times, they have been coming here. So, and also this patient business, the treatment, and there are many other issues here. So there is a relationship which existed of the peoples, especially coming to West Bengal. And I think that is not dying away even now. So, I mean, we can't say that we have become rank outsider because uh, because of the fact that there is a relationship with China or a relationship existing with
That's right.
Pakistan. India still exists in that form.
Did you address my main concern, which is how vulnerable is India's northeast to a Bangladesh backed by China and Pakistan?
Look, there is a 20-kilometer corridor. We have thought about making a railway line that starts from Jogbani and goes to Nepal and it bypasses the 20-kilometer corridor, reaches the other side directly. It should be possible. The many things are possible here. Uh, People can be concerned about China being in the Chumbi Valley on top, which we say the area of Dokalam. And then, of course, Chinas are now making a DPR of the areas, Rangpur and the areas on the north, which is a DPR being made for water resources of Tista as it enters, especially in the lean period between November and the month of March. But having said that, India is on all sides of Bangladesh. Yeah, it's not China which is on all sides of Bangladesh. While we are,
You,
where do we don't exist in comparison to Bangladesh? I mean, when you say from one side they have a small patch that enters into Myanmar. Otherwise, India has been very forthcoming in many ways to help out Bangladesh whenever the need be, including we gave the island. We sorted out a maritime boundary as an adversity to ourselves. We sorted out the land boundary, very difficult land boundary was sorted out with adversity to us. So I don't think that those are issues here. Are we threatened? I don't think so. You should use the word threat in a casual language and discussion.
yeah.
It's not simple, and I don't think we should pursue the issue of some people say about three front and all that. I think these are not simplistic issues to be spoken of, saying that there is a three front threat. It doesn't happen. I would even vouch for not a two front threat, but then of course those are separate issues. I think we should push this issue back. There are concerns that we have. There are 1 lakh Chinese even today inside Bangladesh, and they have got the friendship bridges, the Padma Bridge. So many things happening. What Chinese are doing. The 3 hospitals that they are making now. I don't think we should say that we are threatened. If somebody says, "Look, India can be cut off from the entire Northeast," let him be. I mean, see, if we start reacting to what everything Mr. Trump says, the whole time we are only reacting only है because
Yeah.
every day he says something ना तो रोज ही
That's
कुछ
right.
बोलता है
So,
रोज ही कुछ बोल रहे हैं तो आप तो react ही करते रहोगे next 4 years we'll be reacting to Mr. Trump. Now if you react to
okay.
one general saab who's retired like me who's talking too much and he says I can northeast ठीक है let him be happy. We
Okay.
don't have to react
All
to every
right.
situation.
All right. Moving on. Mr. Badrul Hassan, if I can come back to you, could you explain to us what was behind Hasina's, making this big grand splash kind of an interview about the St. Martin's charge, and then with a piece on the which appeared in another publication on the last few hours of her prime ministership before she fled. Is there a move? Is this a move you think to change the narrative somehow and get international attention? Is she under pressure from outside forces? Does she have support at all internationally, or is she just been, sort of abandoned?
Well, that's an interesting question. Sheikh Hasina, over the last 10 months, she has been talking to her regular party supporters across the world, in Bangladesh, in Europe, in the UK and the USA. But the feeling among people who have supported the Awami League or who feel sympathetic toward the Awami League is that there's been no change in her position. And what she said during the last phase of her prime ministership That has been registered. That is registered with people, and we are seeing the results now. And we are apprehensive of how things might turn out in the near future. But as far as Sheikh Hasina is concerned, the feeling grows that she needs to loosen her grip on the party. And
Yes,
I
this is.
understand
I read that. I read that too, Mr. Ehsan, where they says that her coterie were basically four advisors, and the
exactly,
four and they never challenged her, and basically that's why, unlike before, when Sheikh Mujib's demise, the party did have a second rung and a third rung, so no such rung
exactly.
exists right now.
No, Nina, you see, if we go back to the 1971 war, when Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, we revere him as Bongo Bondu, when he was arrested by the Pakistan Army in the early hours of the 26th of March 1971, immediately after he passed on his Declaration of Independence to a local Chittagong leader of the Awami League, he had this second tier of leadership. Prime Minister, people like Tajuddin Ahmed, Sayyid Nazrul Islam, who formed, in consultation with Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, the Mujibnagar government in Calcutta, and they waged a war. They conducted a war. They led the country to freedom. Uh, post August 1975, the Awami League was divided into three factions, led by three people. Three Awami Leaguers, Diwan Farid Ghazi, and there was another veteran Awami Leaguer, Rizanur Rahman Chaudhry, and also by Zohra Tajuddin, the widow of Tajuddin Ahmed. These people kept the Awami League in three factions, of course, together. Then Sheikh Hasina came and took over in May 1981, where she was elected party president while she was in exile in India at the time. So she reunified the party. So and the party, and we know the rest of the history of the Awami League. But
Yeah.
with what happened after what happened in August 2024, the Awami League is scattered. There's no one to take charge of the party because of the feeling, and it is a very credible feeling, that during Sheikh Hasina's time as Prime Minister and as leader of the Awami League, no second rung of leadership developed in the party. And even the General Secretary, people like Obaidul Qadir and other senior leaders of the party, they were not elected, they were selected on her directives. So what we had during Sheikh Hasina's time in the Awami League and in her government was a group of sycophants or yes men and yes women ready to characterize her every move as acceptable. So that is Sheikh Hasina's problem now. There's the problem of the Awami League. And now the other day, Obaidul Qadir, who has been silent all these months, suddenly he came forth with an audio statement which said nothing new. It's the same propaganda, same kind of statement that the Awami League leaders had been making. And people in Bangladesh have, during the Awami League period of government in Bangladesh, we were quite mystified, quite disturbed at the way they kept on talking of politics in a way that was negative. The Awami League or Sheikh Hasina as Prime Minister, let's be frank, she never reached out to the entire country. She was always the Awami League Prime Minister, not the country's Prime Minister.
And not Bangladesh's Prime Minister.
See, I mean, the leadership that Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and Tajuddin Ahmed, the kind of leadership that they exercised was expected of Sheikh Hasina, which she did not do. Now she's also aged. She is now 78. She was born in 1947, but yet she is unwilling to hand over responsibility to any party leader. But then again, there are a good number of party senior leaders of the party, former ministers and former MPs, who have gone over to India through the border. Some have come to the UK, here in London, ministers and ministers of state. A few weeks ago, they were spotted at a wedding. At a wedding, they were invited to by a local UK Awami League leader, and they were portrayed as enjoying themselves. Now, questions have been raised about the sufferings that their grassroots party leaders and activists in Bangladesh are going through. That they're being threatened with jail, they're being killed, and they're being persecuted. They don't have any homes to stay. Their children are deprived of education. Those grassroots people are suffering. On the other hand, these ministers, that includes the former foreign minister also, they have been leading good lives abroad. They've been living in rented houses. And when you talk to them, see about I've heard from these Awami League sympathizers in the UK, they ask for donations to carry on a struggle for
That
restoration.
that that
And
that's the story, isn't it? That they're surviving this onslaught against them by
yeah,
by
so
by
yes,
abandoning the country, so to speak.
and see, and these people, I mean, these people who have, I mean, there's no sympathy. You can take it for granted that there is no sympathy for the ministers of Sheikh Hasina's government. People,
Yes,
people have sympathy for Sheikh Hasina, have support for Sheikh Hasina, owing largely to the fact that she's the daughter of Bangladesh's founder. But other than
yes.
that, the kind of leadership that we had in 1971 during the war, post 1975, that kind of leadership is non-existent, which makes it difficult for the Awami League to return as a political party into the field. That, of
Yeah,
course,
as a
is
political
different.
force.
As a
Yes.
that, of course, is different from the issue of the outlawing of the Awami League. So there we
Yeah.
have this problem.
So, Professor Datta, if I can come to you, what was China? What is China's interest in, like the Chittagong port and so on and so forth? Because India made a very calculated move to befriend the Maldivian government, even though it wasn't really friendly to us. And they've done the same thing in Sri Lanka, where they've, befriended the new administration. Do you think we've made a blunder in not reaching out to Khalida Zia? I'm talking about Chinese investment in Bangladesh, which Yunus has brought
Yeah.
in a very big way.
Okay, so let's begin with Chinese investments again, as has been pointed out by others. It's an old age story. It's nothing new. From the defense to every investment, every road that works in Bangladesh has been built by China. All those 8 bridges over those rivers, which has made Bangladesh's connectivity so good, is thanks to Chinese. So that project has been on all the time. We've actually also made too much of this particular visit of Yunus to. This is a particular conference he goes to for the last 5 years, if not more. It was on the sidelines of the conference that he met the leaders, and they've promised so much. But we've seen China promise so much and more to all the neighbors for the last 10 years. How much is actually true? So, I would actually think we'd still look at development projects. In fact, coming back to the submarine port that they built, I recently heard a report about how Bangladesh is talking to, I think, Taiwan for buying some, submarines or something like that. So I don't know why Bangladesh needs all of that. And I think that's been a question 20 years ago. We used to always say that why does Bangladesh need all these equipments and defense systems? Everybody, of course, argued that they were useless and, they were not first generation ever and all of that. But I think we need to look at it from the Chinese point of view, that China in South Asia has only one aim, which is India. So however much you can, kind of poke into India's eyes is something that they look at. So whether it's befriending Maldives, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and everybody else, Nepal also. But again, while development project-wise, they've been very good. I think Sheikh Hasina was also very concerned about the fact that India should not feel that China was doing something which would, affect our security concerns. I think that's the thing. That has been the difference now, because we are not so sure whether interim government or the next government to be elected is going to do the same for India. But I would certainly think that India is far more capable, and it has the capacity to, to defend itself, to look out for its own interest. I don't think we should be so easily threatened by any movement that's happening in South Asia. But China is the non-resident player. Let's not forget it. They will do anything that they can to extend whatever cooperation, and whichever party is in place, whichever government is placed, and that's not only Bangladesh. Look at how they've changed with every single government in the neighborhood. So that's something that we have to be prepared for. We'll have to keep our own, gunpowder dry. But at the same time, I think we are putting too much of importance on these little projects that are being discussed. I don't think anything right now, the interim has taken any decision which we should look at it through a very point of serious concern. Just one point of the Pakistan bit, again, a point that was made by General Sharma. Very young in my days, I remember we'd always known about the military ties of Pakistan and Bangladesh. That were always there. Even today, while they were here, and it is funny because we've never seen ISI do so much of photo ops like they did. So clearly they want want to send a message. But if you talk to anybody in Bangladesh, whether it's a journalist, whether it's a student, whether it's, somebody from the civil society, they are just not bothered. They don't have anything to do with Pakistan. I mean, the old historic wounds continue to fester, and I don't think there's no economic engagement at this point of time. Bangladesh is in no mood to socially engage with Pakistan. So what do you have? It's back to the military ties, which is what they're trying to push. But again, I don't think we should think so much about it. We've overdone this thinking, because we've got this instant thing about Yunus, that we don't like him for whatever reason. So anything, you're happy to hear the worst. I don't think that's the case. I mean, of course, the couple of the things that Yunus has pronounced obviously was poking us. I mean, who talks about SARC these days? Who talks
Yeah.
about Lal Moniar Haat? It doesn't make sense. And that, I mean, again, General Sharma
No,
would.
in fact, I'd like to bring the general in on Lal Monidhat,
Yeah.
which I'm sure I'm mispronouncing, because the fact is that whether we like it or not, strategy-wise, China has always needled us on the northeast. I mean, there's no question. But the Bangladesh army chief may or may not play along with it. I don't think he's going to. I mean, the current army chief, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But we did have a Doklam to deal with, General. Have we learned any lessons from Doklam? And secondly, this China looking at there are very strong reports, credible reports, that China is looking at turning Lal Monhirat Airport in Rangpur district into a full-fledged military civilian base. I mean, it's barely 20 kilometers, as you say, from the Siliguri corridor. So they've promised to fund the development of it. And what do we have in as a counter on the Siliguri corridor and in the northeast? I mean, do we have a military presence on the ground that can counter China? I know you guys are experts in this, but I think our viewers would like to know.
So I think again we come back to the issue of threat. See, when you make a ALG, an advanced landing ground, this Lal Buller Ghat, and I have served in Binagudi at one time, which is just across the border, Bannar Ghat and all those places around there. And you see, when you make an advanced landing ground, this airfield is 100 years old. This is not new.
Yes.
It was made by the British for supporting of Field Marshal Slim's forces in Burma. So it's old, and it's been defunct for some time. It is one of the 9 air bases that the Bangladesh Air Force has got. So it does exist. But I come back to my point I was making. Lal Monar Ghat is in the stone's throw. You throw a stone from one side of the border, and I'm saying figuratively, it will land up at Lal Monar Ghat. It is not a wartime airfield. Sorry. You can't fly from the airfield in the wartime. If there will never be a war. I mean, I pray there will never be a war. We military people are the last ones who want to talk war. It is so tough in life. The fact is that it is within the artillery range. You don't even have to use missiles or air force or anything. It's so close. We make airfields of this kind all the time. And we understand that many of these airfields are peacetime, for peacetime resources, for supply, for logistics, for looking after some areas, for something else. But to say that they are useful as a threat, I don't think so. Lal Munir Ghat is not a threat. You can sit on one side and keep throwing stones and it will hit it. It will not be usable in any times of threat. That's one part of the story. Second is that there would be a presence of, see, the way the Chinese function is that even if they are making a dam, say Padma, there would be PLA embedded inside. That's the way they work. People who retired and go away, they get involved into that game. If they start working in Rangpur in tomorrow, their DPR probably ready, there would be some supervisors or somebody who would come from PLA. So they would be there, like they are there in Gilgit-Baltistan. Gilgit-Baltistan, north of India, is that whole lot of these mining projects and the SCZs being made out there and the dams and etc. in POK. There are PLA people embedded as supervisors as work as something. That doesn't make it's a threat. That's the way the country works. Yeah, that's the way China works. They are permeating, and see, if they have best of trade with 150 countries in the world, South Asia is one of them. They have the best of the maximum trade with all the neighbors of India because That's where I mean, to say that they're coming naturally. Their presence in Nepal and in also their relationship with Bhutan and in Myanmar, they are both sides. They help out the TBA, they help out the Myanmar army also. In Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka, in Maldives, in any one of these countries you name, China is there. It's a
That's
way
true.
China.
So basically, what you're saying is that China has been ever-present danger for quite some time. I recognize, I accept the fact that China has been a factor in the region for quite some time, but this recent developments in Bangladesh have left us with a vulnerable eastern flank. I mean, in the sense we may have even lulled ourselves into a false sense of security as long as we had an ally like Sheikh Hasina in power in Dhaka. What happens now? Do you think that there are foreign powers like Washington and London who could be looking at how to thwart Chinese mischief, shall we say, in the Bangladesh border?
Can I just
And
come?
was that the real story behind the Rakhine corridor? I mean, was this? They're calling it a humanitarian corridor, but the fact is, it would lead into repopulating a very key part of Myanmar with the Rohingyas. So because most of the Rohingya refugees are still living in Cox's Bazar, so where they took refuge. So is that a game you think that is in
Can I
play?
just come in here briefly about the India perspective in Bangladesh? I'm just talking. I mean, I'm sure Badrul Bhai and Jen Sharma will say. So far last year, sometime in end of November, I'd gone to Dhaka and I'd met the deputy chief of Jamaat Islami. Of course, if you know, all of us think that they're the most politically correct people and all of that. But besides everything else, I also asked him about his anti-India position, which is something which is popularly known. So he said, quote me if you need to, and I'm happy to be that. He says Bangladesh has to work with India. There is no other way out. For Bangladesh's own betterment, our first and last resort is always India. He says, let's not ever, delusion ourselves that we can survive without India. No. But I, of course, met a lot of these friends in the BNP and other political parties, including some of the NCP leaders. NCP hasn't formed, but the student leaders I met, and everybody, they had issues about how India was passive to what Sheikh Hasina was doing. And, they said if you didn't agree, then these elections wouldn't have been held. And, all of those farcical elections, because, I mean, I do understand that. But again, when it came to having ties and engagement to India, each and every one said, of course, I mean, there is no other way. And, what has happened, of course, BNP also went on to record saying that what has happened in the past is a different phase. Now it's different. We know better. We completely understand it. And I think Tariq Zia, again, of course, these are all words, whether we can take them at face value or not, has been making the right noises sitting in London. But how much of it he can actually convey once he's back in his country is a different matter. But the leadership in Bangladesh across the board think working with India can never be a question. Over
Okay.
to the rest of you. Yeah.
All right. Well, what about the foreign attempts by Washington and London to sort of keep China at bay
That's
Can
for
I
me.
through
Okay.
can I
Bangladesh? I mean, I open that question to all of you. But
so let me take a shy at it. Uh, you see, between China and United States, there is a day and night relationship. To say that the Americans are working to pull China down, tariffs, 200%, whatever thing, they are so intertwined together that United States and China cannot move apart economically. It's a very very intertwined relationship, and despite the fact that's why suddenly he raises the tariff one day and drops the other day. Those part of the story. The American
apart from the tariffs, where Bangladesh is
so
concerned
I'll
and
come to
China is
Bangladesh.
concerned.
Yeah. So as far as Bangladesh is concerned, in any other country, the Americans are now seeking to at least get some relationships going. As it stands, their the so-called U.S. empire, which was across the world, has been dwindling steadily. They haven't had many countries which follow them. And as it is, you see in the voting pattern. Bangladesh is one more country which is actually fallen apart, especially Mr. Biden's doing in the Mr. Biden's time when he made life difficult for Bangladesh and for Sheikh Hasina also. So there is a thing that the Americans have brought themselves into the situation into Bangladesh that pulls them away from a relationship with Bangladesh. Now, this question of humanitarian corridors, again the anxiety of the chief of Bangladesh army is right. The question is, what humanitarian? Are we saying, are we going to provide aid as part of the humanitarian corridor to the people of Rakhine states? Or are we allowing the people of that state to come to Bangladesh because they having a tough time with the Arakan army and also with the minorities? What is the humanitarian corridors are not new. They have been there in history. The point of humanitarian corridors
No,
is
my question basically is that humanitarian corridor a cover for something else in the sense because the Myanmar junta is up against a very quite a strong position in the sense of all these militias, the Arakan Army, the Chin National Front, and even the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, which doesn't
yeah.
see eye to eye with the Arakan Army. So, I mean, are we looking at the entry of American troops through the back door, so to speak? I
American troops
mean,
are
in the
not coming
sense,
anywhere. American troops are not
not
coming
true.
anywhere. They have
But
gone
there
out of
are
Afghanistan.
reports, General. There are
Sir,
reports, General, that
they
mercenaries have come through, American and British mercenaries. How far it's true, I don't know, but I read somewhere
even
that they,
even in the
yes,
mercenary organization, I have a doubt that the Americans will get involved into physicality because there is always trouble which comes up with this kind of physicality, boots on ground kind of thing. So I have my grave doubts into Americans getting involved into anything physical in Myanmar. It is not doing. I would presume that they would make any time life difficult for China in any which way they can do, and they would be more anxious about this corridor which has been picked up between Chukpayu and from Mandalay to Ruili to across to Yangon. That corridor which has come up in a very big way will be irksome. So they would want to do something which can deny that corridor across to the Chinese, which they're existing. The second one coming up from Yangon to Mandalay and coming up north. So, in any way, they can make a little life difficult for Chinese is all right. But I think Bangladesh is becoming a pawn in this game between these two major countries, and Bangladesh is rightly in their own vision with the Chinese more than they are with the United States, despite the fact that Mr. Yunus has had a strong relationship with the Democrats. But I think they have finally decided, and I hate to differ with Sri Radha. We go back to IDSA days, but I think I do tend to read into Mr. Yunus's visit to China a little more because similar time I know the Bow Forum and all that he went across to that one, but you see what Mr. Oli did, and Mr. Oli and Mr. Shrestha, the Deputy Prime Minister, who went across to at the similar time across to China, and the kind of thing they have signed is 14 roads coming from Tibet into Nepal. I mean, you are game changing the entire Nepal, the roads coming down to Tarai in future times, maybe after 10 years. But you see, the Chinese have deep pockets despite the economic troubles. And I think there's much more to be learned. We in India should have taken the bait of making the DPR for the Rangpur area where the Tista enters and decided that we will help you out making the dams and canals and reservoirs and water storage before the Tista joins us with the Brahmaputra. And why leave it as an
yes,
open
very
field for
good
the
point.
Chinese to put their foot into this one? It's our also,
Absolutely.
we should be more proactive into this matter. Rangpur area, that area, which is that knob that comes out on Bangladesh, is anxiety for us, because it is very close to a thin corridor. We should have been proactive in that matter.
Can I just come in here, Nina?
If I can, yeah, I haven't given Mr. Ehsan a chance to talk at all, so please quickly.
Okay, so two things. One is about the Rakhine corridor. It was initially a UNDP report about the famine, about how people needed
Yeah,
essential for food items. And I don't
yeah,
think
correct.
USA needs an excuse of a corridor if they want to stomp into Myanmar. I mean, what are we
Okay.
thinking? Horsebacks now? What are we thinking? I don't think that's an option at all. If US wants to intervene, they will do it at their own will. They don't need Bangladesh to piggyback on. I mean, let's be clear on that. And this particular thing Awami League is constantly raising, it's nonsense. It's a total,
Oh,
I mean, I don't believe in it. And the other bit about, what was the other? Anyway, I'll come back to that later. I think let Badrul Bhai come in here.
yeah, I was just saying there is a lot of talk about yes, Mohammed Yunus's connections with Washington with the previous Biden administration, but there's also talk of the US Charge d'Affaires holding meetings with, Myanmar rebels, I mean, the Arakan rebels and so on. And this Rakhine corridor has also been the subject with the general, the Bangladesh general Wakaruzaman is supposed to have met US officials a few weeks ago. And the US Navy has been very much present close to Bangladeshi waters. So, what do you think? Is this a conspiracy theory, or is there any truth to reports that the US is interested in rattling China by using Bangladesh as a cat's paw?
Well, it all shows that Bangladesh is now caught in that vortex we call geopolitics. And the sad fact is that we, at present, we don't have an effective government, popularly elected government that can deal with the issue. Now, what we have in the region are two powers: India on the one hand, and China, and we in Bangladesh need to I won't say use the word blaze a trail. We need to develop a policy whereby we can engage with both countries in a productive way, so that India and China can step in where all these ideas, conspiracy theories or conspiracies might call them, of outside interference, American intervention or interference comes in. So we need to have a situation where the integrity, the physical and political integrity of Bangladesh stays safe from people, from governments like those of the United States. Now, there was a feeling when Donald Trump came in for the second time that the Yunus administration would be under pressure because of Yunus's friendship with the Democrats. But that has not happened. I think the Americans are taking a long-term pragmatic view till this point of time. But the bigger point is that which is again the point that comes back to our internal politics. We need to have elections in Bangladesh as early as possible, but then those elections also need to be very inclusive. We have the BNP, we have the other political parties, we have the Jamaat also, which has stepped in much to our discomfort because of its role in 1971. But then what Sirada said when she talked to the Jamaat leader, the way he talked about Bangladesh's ties with India, that is sort of reassuring. So we need to have inclusive elections where the Awami League also needs to be permitted to take part. And we need to have a government. It may be a coalition government. I said earlier, the Awami League will win hands down. Sirada didn't agree. Maybe she's
Yeah,
right.
who said
Maybe it will not win hands down. Maybe, but it'll be all these major political parties, the BNP, the Awami League, and to a certain extent, General Ershad's, the late General Ershad's Jatiya Party. They will need to come together not only to preserve liberal values of the country and the historical heritage of the country, but also shape a consensus on foreign policy regarding all these changes, all these policies that have been taking place outside the country. So the Yunus government is, of course, has been trying very hard, but then also it's a government that has at many points proved dysfunctional. Like for example, in foreign affairs. So in foreign affairs, as we said earlier, we have a foreign affairs advisor, we have a national security affairs advisor, and many of them have been talking in separate discordant voices. So that happens when you have people in government who have not been in government in earlier periods of time. So we need to go back to an elected form of government, elected government as soon as possible. And at the same time, we need to engage with both India and China. And for their part, the Indian government, I would say, to go back to an earlier point, the restrictions on imports to land, imports and exports to land ports, the Modi government could have done things a little better. It could have engaged with the Yunus government, not in support of what the Yunus government is doing, but in support of the people of Bangladesh, because these restrictions hurt in the end the people of Bangladesh. India is not hurt that much because India is a vast country. It has a number of states where you can fend for yourself. But in Bangladesh, we need items like onions, Indian onions, for example. So India could have the Modi government could have engaged with the Modi government. At the same time, the Modi government could have exercised gentle influence and pressure on the Yunus government for a return to democratic government in Bangladesh. The feeling in Bangladesh is
that's
see, because the feeling in Bangladesh is that the Modi
sorry, the
government
feeling in Bangladesh.
the feeling in Bangladesh still is that the Modi government was always too allied with the Awami League government. Now that kind of relationship should change. It should be based on state-to-state relationship. So in future, if a BNP government comes in, if a Jatiya Party government comes in, or a coalition government comes in, I think Indian perspectives should change. At the same time, perspectives from our part, from Bangladesh, should also change. We have to realize, as so many in Bangladesh do realize, that much as we criticize India, condemn India for things known and unknown, for things true and untrue, we need to live with India, because India is our neighbor on three sides, and also there's the Bay of Bengal. So we cannot afford to be inimical to India, and the two countries need to foster a relationship. And Sridhar, during my last visit to India, was kind enough to give me her book, where she lists all the agreements that India and Bangladesh have initialed since the emergence of Bangladesh. So we need to go back to our relationship with India. As far as China is concerned, Bangladesh needs to play to be very proactive with China, not in thoughts of of turning to China as a measure against India. We can't afford to do that. We are a small country, 56,000 square miles or so. So, but we can have a balanced foreign policy. That was what Sheikh Hasina was trying to do during her time. She went to China, as the general pointed out, as Srirada pointed out. So that kind of situation, that kind of politics or geopolitics in our part of the world is something we need. And in Bangladesh today, a lot of people will tell you, people who are allied to the Awami League or supportive of the Awami League, they're upset at the closeness that Bangladesh is developing with Pakistan. No, I don't think that's happening, because Pakistan is on the periphery. Pakistan is something we're not worried about. Their generals might visit our country. Their foreign minister, whose visit was postponed, might come to our country. Even the prime minister, they said, he said, Shehbaz Sharif said the other day that Pahalgam was in revenge for 1971. Well, in 1971, in 1971, Pakistan broke up. Pahalgam did not break up India. So we're not worried about Pakistan. And in fact, we are still surprised. We still discuss amongst ourselves why we had to be part of Pakistan in 1947. But that's another story altogether. So we need
very interesting.
So see, I'll end it here. See, we'll need in Bangladesh right now. We need a timetable for for free, fair elections, inclusive elections, including the Awami League. You can't just abandon a political party which was instrumental in leading the country. Now, whether the question of corruption of the Awami League, last Awami League government is concerned, yes, let investigations be done. There was corruption. There's no denying that. But then, is an unelected government like the present one qualified to investigate corruption? Let that investigation wait. Let all the measures of reforms undertaken by the government wait. Something that the BNP has been talking about. So And in foreign policy, in Bangladesh, we need a foreign policy structure which is based on a strong economy. As long as our economy is not strong, we cannot have a strong foreign policy. We cannot have a balanced relationship. But the fact is, we in our part of the world, to offset, to convince the Americans and all other forces which might be interested in making inroads into Bangladesh and coming into Bangladesh, to stop them, to thwart their activities, we need to have excellent relations, productive relations with India. We also need to convince the Chinese that you are there, and it's up to you to stop the Americans from making inroads into Myanmar, into Thailand, into Bangladesh. So, of course, the Chinese have their footprints everywhere. In 152 countries, they have their Belt and Road Initiative going in.
Exactly.
We see what they have done to Sri Lanka, what they've done to Gwadar. It's an airport which is not being used at all. We don't want that kind of situation to develop in Bangladesh. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. That was really very concluding remarks, Professor Datta, and after that, the General. Please keep it short. I've run out of time completely.
I would hope that Bangladesh has an election roadmap out soon, so that whether elections are held in December or June. But I would think that Yunus himself, having realized the limitations of interim government, would walk the country towards election. And I hope while India and Bangladesh will never go back to the same footing, it's not possible. I think India and Bangladesh is destined to work together. And all this kind of emotive reactions that we have, we just need to get over with it and get on with business.
General, the fact is that China is also very close to Russia, which is India's closest ally, and Russia is the one who's got to keep India supplied with weaponry and all that. Does China have I was just curious. Does China have access to the technology that Russia supplies to us, and would they actually share that with Pakistan?
Oh my God, yeah. This is a difficult one. Okay. See, when we hit Lahore.
Pakistan did use their Chinese JF fighter jets and the Chinese PL-15 Chinese missiles. I mean, they gave them satellite support apparently through Operation Sindoor. So, it shows that China is actively involved in arming the Pakistan military.
Yeah, so there is, there is more than collusivity. They are collaborating, the total amount of systems. I'm not saying platforms. You talk about platform PL-15 and J-10s and it is the kind of infrastructure provided by the Beidou itself. It is seamless Beidou system between China and Pakistan. All the constellation of satellites which are available to them, Yangon satellites. So, the kind of system in place is there. But to answer your first question is, the HQ-9, which was hit in a AD battery in Lahore, is a Chinese version of a Russian S-300. We have S-400. The Chinese got S-300 from the Russians. They modified it. They must have painted it again and put the screwdriver on left and right and sold it to Pakistan as HQ-9. And HQ-9 is useful. Now they have one more thing coming as HQ-16, which is S-400, which we have. It's the same thing. S-400 is now called HQ-16 by the Chinese. It has been modified and it is being sold to the Pakistani. So the relationship is quite.
To go back to. So to go back to a concluding remark on Bangladesh, India, I mean, what do you see happening in the near future? Would we be, I suppose, do the right thing in reaching out to Bangladesh, or should we just wait to see how things play out in the next coming months?
So I'll ditto what Sri Radha said. Look, India and Bangladesh, and what Mr. Hassan was saying. Look, India and Bangladesh cannot, be separate from each other. We are all around it, even in the Bay of Bengal, we are all around it. There's fishing. So, you can't say that Bangladesh has got relationship with anything other than, it's not a question of Maldives, it's not a question of Sri Lanka, Pakistan, but Bangladesh is a different country. And I don't want to go to 1971 saying we got to independence. That things have gone away and forgotten. Those things are behind us. I don't even think we should rattle it out again and again. We got independence. That's finished. But the part is that Bangladesh is a country which has got a very large population. It's a growing economy. It's a country which we have very good relationships over a very long time, even when the governments were inimical. We just have to get the things right. We just have to say, how can we do? We have to live in this neighborhood. So as far as possible, we should work to get this relationship going. And I must say
Yeah.
that Arakan army, and I'll finish. See, the Chin state, the people of the Arakan army and the Chin people are the same, which are Kukis in Manipur or Lushais in Mizoram. It's the same tribes, say people on both sides. That's why there was 16-kilometer open border. You can't say you can divest yourself from Arakan army also, despite the fact that there is Myanmar government and the Myanmar army, which is different, but the people of India, which are on the border states, are the same kith and kin as the people of the Arakan army and the Chin state. So we have to take everything along. You just cannot say a fence makes. After so many years, Pashtuns on either side of Durand lines are still Pashtuns, and they say we are Pashtuns before we are Pakistanis. It's the same thing out
Right.
here. The same thing
Very
out here
interesting.
in Bangladesh. You meet best of friends. He says, yeah, I support East Pakistan. I mean, the football teams of Bangladesh, is that kind of thought process. I think
Wow.
we need to work to this end to sort out, and I agree with this, that maybe the next elections will make a change. In any case, we have to work with oppositions also, Indian opposition of other countries also. So BNP, we have worked with BNP. In fact, Shirada would know better. And even the time when BNP was in power, our relationship was not bad. We had good relationship going with even when BNP was around. So the best part of policy is that when you can work with inimical governments and still do your national interest, that is success of a nation's
That's very
polity.
well put. Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. So, I mean, now looking forward, Prime Minister Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping are set to meet in Rio de Janeiro in early July. So, this is the 17th BRICS summit. And the last time that they met was in Kazan at the 16th BRICS summit in Russia in October last year, where there was a thaw on the LAC. But Beijing's support, of course, this time for Pakistan during Operation Sindoor has alarmed the Indian establishment for sure. The question remains, what kind of danger does an unstable Bangladesh pose for India? Because a Bangladesh with its economy in free fall is ripe for the picking for people, for governments like Xi Jinping's, and his Belt and Road project, as Dr. Ehsan said, does put governments and economies in jeopardy. So we have to watch out to see whether India can shake off any forthcoming stranglehold with this new threesome on the block, China, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Thank you very much, Mr. Badrul Ehsan, for coming on the show and for your patience going through all this internet upheaval. Thank you very much, Professor Datta, for coming on the show, and thank you, General, for giving us an insight into the military strategy that we should be looking at. Thank you, viewers. Please do click on the New Indian Express website and watch and share Global Express.